Welcome to Almost Here, Round the Corner Future Technology podcasts with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies poised to transform our lives for better or worse are the focus of this podcast. Almost Here means these technologies are now here and starting to be used, or just around the corner, from Bitcoin to artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more. Coming to Dallas, Texas, September 14th, 15th, and 16th, 2018, the Blockchain and Future Tech Expo. This is going to be a gigantic conference of over 5,000 people. We're going to be talking about blockchain and its applications. We're going to be talking about quantum computing, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and several other future technologies that are poised to and actually changing our lives as we speak. Here's why you should attend. As you may know, early adopters are the ones that investigated and profited from things like the gold rush in the 1800s, from the dot-com boom in the 1990s, from the internet boom in 2005, from the smartphone explosion in 2007, from the real estate boom that ended in 2008, and of course, from the Bitcoin boom that started in 2012. Early adopters act now. They don't wait till later. They go out west first. In their covered wagons, they find the biggest gold nuggets. If you consider yourself an early adopter and you want to find the biggest nuggets, then you owe it to yourself to attend this upcoming conference. Blockchain is going to affect how we control and store our medical data, how we send money around the world, how we bank, and more. But artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and cybersecurity will play a pivotal role in our lives as well. And that's why our next event, September 14th to the 16th at the Dallas Convention Center, is going to have not only 5,000 plus attendees, but will showcase blockchain, AI, cybersecurity, quantum computing, and more. You want to get in on the coming gold rush of future tech and opportunity as an early adopter. Don't be left out. To register, go to bftexpo.com. That's Blockchain Future Tech Expo.com. Thank you.
Hello and welcome everyone to the Future Tech Podcast. My name is Josh Thomas, and I'm here with Gabriel Wang from Aite Group. That's AITE Group.com. Aite is Japanese for partner. And Aite is an independent research advisory firm that is focused on business and regulatory and technology topics in the financial services industry. Hello, Gabriel. How are you?
Hey, Josh. Good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Really glad to have you on here. And, financial services is an industry that, at least for the last few years, has been ripe for disruption and innovation. Blockchain technology in particular has come on strong and has really tried to tackle some of the issues that financial services is facing. But outside from that, there are a number of other concerns when it comes to, security of people's money, safety, anti-money laundering, KYC compliance, SEC regulations. There's all kinds of different boxes that we can open and talk about here. But tell me, in your best assessment, what is the core function of Aite?
Sure. So I think, Josh, you gave a very good brief intro of who we are just when you did your intro. So basically, what Aite is, we provide our industry subject matter expertise within the different segments we cover under the umbrella of financial service industry, right? So for me, I am personally on the capital markets team, where we do look at topics that are impacting the global capital markets, including from evolving market structure of the capital markets, depending on different asset classes, and evolving global regulations that are impacting global buy-side and sell-side financial institutions in terms of their daily business operations. And we also follow emerging technologies such as blockchain and the most recent development in those emerging technologies and how they are impacting global financial institutions.
So you're in a unique perspective to see, what's on the horizon and kind of the cutting edge of this. What are some really interesting observations you've been able to make in the last 12 months?
Okay, sure. I think the last 12 months has been kind of interesting because so from my perspective, I started doing research on blockchain for capital markets back in 2015. And that was a time when people within the capital market industry really started to focus their attentions on how do you apply blockchain, or also known as distributed ledger technology, to something that is traditionally using centralized system to process their daily operations, right? So I think over the last 12 months, the experiments on blockchain inside the capital markets has gotten to a point where it's either make or break for the upcoming, I would say, 12 to 18 months. Because as you know, people have put tons and tons, billions of investments for the past 3 years into blockchain POCs, proof of concepts, pilot programs, and a lot of development money and resources have been put into that. So I think the last 12 months mostly is people trying to push forward the proof of concept programs and the pilots and trying to put them into production. And along that process, a lot of challenges have been faced by organizations that are trying to do this, among which I would say the most significant ones are how do you deal with data privacy concerns on the blockchain? How do you deal with the interoperability between different blockchain systems? And ultimately, how do you get a ultimate management buy-in from your institution to move away from the system you're currently working on and trying to move anything on to blockchain system?
Now that the last thing that you said, I think, is the one challenge that almost nobody's really been willing to talk about. It's great that we have this technological innovation and we have blockchain, but how do we shift? How do we convince the old guard to adopt this new technology? And that, from my perspective, and you tell me what you think, but from my perspective, that's one of the biggest challenges that we're facing right now.
Sure.
Is how do we overcome the fact that, well, this is the way we've always done it. Why should we change? Talk to me about that.
Sure. Yeah. That's a great point, right? And that's definitely one of the, as you pointed yourself, that's definitely one of the things that people are still trying to figure out. But I think over the course of the last 12 to 18 months, and I've been doing my research on this as well, I've been talking to people and industry experts in around this, and I think there's a consensus I'm getting here, right? So basically, I think one key point when people are trying to convince either their management or internally trying to migrate to blockchain, I think the overall theme is digitalization of their organization, right? So if you think about digitalization and what kind of role blockchain can play in this, I'll give you a few examples, right? So, and these examples I'm giving are public information. So I'm not speaking to something that I shouldn't be. So, for example, NASDAQ, right, has been utilizing blockchain for their private security market segment for quite a while. And the primary reason for doing that is, as many of you know, the private security market has been a place where paper-based stock certification has been issued traditionally, and as change of asset ownership has been given out in paper-based form, and that's not very efficient. And that's, frankly speaking, not very modernized. So blockchain as the underlying technology could be used to help digitalize a traditionally paper-based workflow or function and help to build an infrastructure for a financial organization to equip itself with the software-based functions and tools to digitalize the entire organization, right? That's just one example. And also because of the nature of blockchain, it provides people with better transparency, immutability of information, and transaction that can provide financial institutions with a better tool to deal with regulatory scrutiny when if something happens, right? So I think the overall theme, just to reiterate here, is for digitalization of financial organization. I think that's the one key thing that people need to be able to actively convey to either internally or externally to move this thing forward.
Makes sense. And so how long have you been involved with the Aite Group?
I joined, I think, late 2013, so I've been here around for 5 years.
And what have been some surprising observations in your 5 years with this group? What would you say is the thing that stands out the most as, wow, I wasn't expecting that to happen?
Well, I think it's really about, I think from what I do here, right, as a industry analyst and what we do as a company, I think what surprises me the most is, how fintech, financial technology has been really emerged as a growing theme and also as a very hot topic inside the industry, and how that's very disruptive to the industry overall. But what surprises me more is, despite how much money people have been pouring into fintech, such as blockchain, artificial intelligence, and big data probably 5 years ago, and now called something else, right? All these different fintech themes, it just seems to me that inside of the financial industries, firms do not particularly move fast enough, although they have made huge commitments from the capital side and also from the other resources like talents and people they throw into all these projects, right? I'm just a little surprised by how slow the progresses have been made among those organizations.
So the money moves fast, but the people move slow.
Yes, I think that's a very good summary. Yeah.
Wow. Now, why do you think that is? Because for me, if I'm going to put money into something, I want to see a return as quick as possible. But so why do you think that they can pour all of the money in, but that they don't move fast enough to act on it? Let's dig into that, because there seems to be some reasoning for that.
Sure. There's definitely just by the looks of it, right? There's definitely, it seems an obvious discrepancy there, right? So I think you need to think about people's motivations here. I think I wouldn't say the biggest incentive. I would say definitely the one of the majority incentives for the financial institutions to put money or to move into some project initially is this fear of missing out, right? So if you are a global asset manager or a major global investment bank, right, and one of your peers is into this thing, blockchain, and you know that your competitor is putting millions and millions of dollars and putting a lot of people into developing a blockchain-based solution for, let's say, clearing settlement for, let's say, credit default swaps, right? Let's say something like that. Then you are in a fear of missing out by this opportunity to compete and in a potentially new and disruptive market where your competitor is going to be a major player in, right? So it's more, I would say it's more fear-driven sometimes, rather than, let's say, I want really to innovate and to be head mover in this space. So that's one of the reasons. And secondly, sometimes projects can get really scope creeped inside the capital market. So sometimes you start with something small and you were not as ambitious as you wanted to be. But as time goes by and as you put more resources allocated to this specific project, you could be underestimating the level of complexity as you were initially putting together the project scope. So you could be adding more and more time and resources to the project, only to realize that you didn't take into consideration all these moving parts at the very beginning when you try to start the project, right? So some projects got either delayed or put aside because of other priorities. So within I would say within capital markets, different units, different business units, different heads of business units all usually fight for internal budget, depending on the firm's priorities in a given time frame.
Now, let's kind of move forward here. We've been talking about some of the observations that you've made over time. Let's take a look at the future. You're an analyst for the financial services industry, specifically with business regulations, technology. Now let's take each of these and unpack them from the business perspective. Where do you see financial services in the next 5 years? Let's say, because they move slow. Let's say in the next 5 years we see some developments, business regulations, technology. Take your pick, and let's kind of look forward 5 years. Tell me what's going to happen. What are the innovations on the horizon?
Okay, sure. I think I will say this. Although I said that generally speaking, capital markets firms move slower in terms of just progress and adoption of emerging technology. But I will say this. Given how a lot of these new regulatory regimes are coming in and becoming effective either immediately or soon within the 12 months, right? For example, MiFID II, etc. I think firms are going to be more cost conscious, and in order to cut down costs, especially around operational costs, they're going to rely more on technologies, and in most cases, emerging technologies as well. And when I say emerging technologies, some of the technology themes I'm going to talk about just very briefly may surprise you as emerging. For example, cloud. I think people have been talking about cloud for probably the past 10 years. But within the capital market industry, cloud has been really gaining momentum just for the past 2 or 3 years, to be perfectly honest. So I think for the next 5 years, you're going to see a lot more real adoption of public cloud inside the capital market. And 5 years from now, I would say you're definitely going to see, to some degree, real adoption of blockchain-based systems, maybe for information record sharing and transferring, probably less to a degree about moving assets on blockchain.
So let's talk about regulations. It's a hot topic, especially with financial services, and especially those of us who are invested into cryptocurrencies. And there's been some sweeping changes that have depressed the markets, spiked the markets. What do you see this evening out anytime soon? And what's it going to take for us to just get everything settled so everybody can move forward?
Well, I think overall the crypto, I'm assuming you're both referring to the ICO space and also the secondary trading of crypto assets, right?
Well, so there's that, and ICO has become something of a bad word lately, especially with all the regulations coming in, and we're seeing a shift. From the companies that we're talking to, we're seeing a shift to where, they're filing for their Regulation D exemption, or they're filing a Regulation A, and they're going after just accredited investors, and they're following the rules. A lot of them are now. And so I see that kind of as a shift. But let's fast forward, Ed. How do we clean up? There's a lot of muck out there. How do we clean that up? And how do you see regulations playing a role in that?
Sure. I think I'll focus my answer on the trading side, not the ICO issuance, etc. So, so I frequently chat with major digital exchanges or crypto exchanges, whatever you call them, and also some of the OTC trading venues for crypto assets. I think the sense I'm getting here right now is just generally speaking, overall, this emerging industry and this emerging asset class is not a regulated one, just as of today. So as you may know, the SEC has recently made a statement clearly that this is a unregulated mass, and they're going to take further actions. Right now, they're basically putting a message and a sense out there that a lot of these online trading platforms for cryptos are not registered with the SEC nor with FINRA, and as a result, unlawful. But with that said, that is not to say all of the exchanges today in existence are not by any means regulated at all. Some of the exchanges, right, they either have some, let's say New York State license or have some sort of credentials that they have, as they are more established than some of the smaller ones. I think where this goes is we definitely are going to see more restrict limitations and regulations from regulatory bodies such as the SEC. I think that's a necessary step towards a more regulated market and stable market. I think right now there's a lot of confusion of what some people can do and cannot do on an exchange, and how do you deal with asset custody on an exchange. There's a lot of question marks there. So the regulators will and have to step in and put a lot of certainty around the market. And the market structure itself is evolving and adapting, and that will have the regulations will have a large dramatic impact on that as well. I think just 12 or to 18 months from now, you'll definitely see many of the smaller crypto trading exchanges going out of business, because they will fail to provide either a proof of their credential, their security features, their compliance with incoming regulations around cryptos, and also their lack of credibility. Because as you know, a lot of this news and scandals about cryptocurrencies exchanges being hacked, lack of security features, etc. So that's going to change pretty soon.
Well said. Gabriel Wang from IteGroup.com. Tell us about your company and who is the ideal client or customer for you. For instance, we have a lot of technology enthusiasts and many who are interested in financial services industry. Who's a great candidate to interact with your company?
Sure. Great question. So typically we divide our company's clients into two buckets. Actually, I was going to say three, but I think the first bucket is global financial institutions, right? This is fairly straightforward. Banks, asset managers, exchanges, market utilities. And the second bucket is what we call vendors, right? So these vendors, you either are incumbent vendors like a Bloomberg, FIS, or IBM. These are all bucketed into income vendors, but we interact with a lot of these fintech players, right? So you're a smaller startup, you have your own technology capabilities, you have your infrastructure, you wanted to get into financial services industry, and then you're looking for advice in terms of how do you do market entry, etc. We are also very keen to interact with fintech startup for that purpose.
Okay, very good. Well, we're gonna wrap for today. Any final thoughts before we go?
Well, I just want to say I think it's just a final quick note on the blockchain side. I think blockchain is not going to go away. I think it just takes longer than people initially thought that as the industry-wide adoption is going to go.
Right. Yeah, well, I certainly agree with you on that. It's not going away. It's just a matter of the time frame of how long it takes to get there. So, once again, this has been Gabriel Wang from AiteGroup.com, AITE Group.com. We highly recommend that you check that out. And until next time, this has been Josh Thomas. We'll see you on the next episode of the Future Tech Podcast.
Coming to Dallas, Texas, September 14th, 15th, and 16th, 2018, the Blockchain and Future Tech Expo. This is going to be a gigantic conference of over 5,000 people. We're going to be talking about blockchain and its applications. We're going to be talking about quantum computing, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and several other future technologies that are poised to and actually changing our lives as we speak. Here's why you should attend. As you may know, early adopters are the ones that investigated and profited from things like the gold rush in the 1800s, from the dot-com boom in the 1990s, from the internet boom in 2005, from the smartphone explosion in 2007, from the real estate boom that ended in 2008, and of course, from the Bitcoin boom that started in 2012. Early adopters act now. They don't wait till later. They go out west first. In their covered wagons, they find the biggest gold nuggets. If you consider yourself an early adopter and you want to find the biggest nuggets, then you owe it to yourself to attend this upcoming conference. Blockchain is going to affect how we control and store our medical data, how we send money around the world, how we bank, and more. But artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and cybersecurity will play a pivotal role in our lives as well. And that's why our next event, September 14th to the 16th at the Dallas Convention Center, is going to have not only 5,000 plus attendees, but will showcase blockchain, AI, cybersecurity, quantum computing, and more. You want to get in on the coming gold rush of future tech and opportunity as an early adopter. Don't be left out. To register, go to bftexpo.com. That's blockchainfuturetechexpo.com. Thank you. You have been listening to Almost Here, Around the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Subscribe to this podcast, post a review to discover more future technologies that are poised to transform our lives for better or worse, such as Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.